If you've ever heard that sound, you probably already know and hate what it is. And yet, despite the almost universal hatred this invention draws for anyone over the age of 10, people still give them out under the thinly veiled guise of toys. Yes, today we are taking a look at the history of the kazoo. One of the world's most annoying inventions, yet as we will find, this was not always the case. We start our story hundreds of years ago to an instrument known as the mirliton. The first iterations of the mirlitons were made back in the year 1000 from the horns of cows using the membrane of a spider eggshell. These quasi-instruments were used to distort the voices during tribal ceremonies. This brings us to the 16 and 1700s, when during colonialism, many things, including the mirliton, were brought over and modified to Europe, taking the names eunuch or onion flute, constructed out of wood or metal. A popular item both with African slaves brought to the US and with Europeans, Macon, Georgia is where the kazoo is popularly believed to have been born. A collaboration between a former slave Alabama Vest and German-American clockmaker Thaddeus von Clegg, the first modern kazoo is said to have been made in 1840, though the lack of written records makes it difficult to confirm this story. While more stories circled around and various similar inventions came about, it wasn't until January 9th, 1883, that a patent and the first official record of the kazoo was made by Warren Herbert Frost, with this quote from the patent: "This instrument or toy to which I propose to give the name kazoo." And the name stuck, despite Frost's patent looking a little bit different from kazoos of today. While it's not exactly clear why Frost named the instrument the kazoo, which is the first time the name began to circulate, it's believed to be named after the British term bazoo or bazooka, which, contrary to what you may think, is not about a rocket launcher, but instead an old trumpet. Our next stop is a new patent of the kazoo, this time with a sleek metal body, awarded to George D. Smith on May 27, 1902. Yet, like Vest, von Clegg, and Frost, these creations and patents did not lead to widespread usage, perhaps the inventors lacking the means or demand to produce the instruments on a larger scale. It isn't until 1916 that out of Eden, New York, the original American Kazoo Company, and yes, that's its name, began manufacturing metal kazoos on this large scale out of a two-room shop and factory, as the only American company to produce metal kazoos at the time. And they started at the right time. For years, popularity of the kazoo crept up until an explosion in the Great Depression era, being one of the few instruments most could afford during the hard times. The kazoo, as well as similar instruments like the harmonica, became the sound of the blues and other soul music by communities, complemented by pale drums and snapping fingers. Once America rose out of the Great Depression, the kazoo slowly lost favor in bands, being seen both as an instrument of the poor and not very complicated to manage. And as plastic became more and more readily available, the kazoos became increasingly placed in the hands of children, not professional bands. But instead of falling out of style, this new youth crowd of kazoo fans grew. As it did, so did production, reaching a sort of silver age in the 90s, with the American Kazoo Company producing up to 1.5 million kazoos a year. The kazoo works its way into many songs throughout the years, with cases such as the Beatles' song Sgt. Pepper's, games like Yoshi's Island and Plants vs. Zombies, and appearing in movies like Chicken Run, as well as the theme song for Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. That is where we find the kazoo today. The original American Kazoo Company stands mostly intact at its location in Eden, now known as the Kazoo Factory and Museum. In 2010, another kazoo museum was founded in South Carolina. There's even a National Kazoo Day, which is the fourth Thursday in January, or considered January 28th, based on when it is thought to have first been invented. Despite what I had mentioned at the beginning of this video, the kazoo is an iconic piece of America's history, with its ancestry tracking back to both Europe and Africa. Its legacy is one of memes and jokes, of kids playing and parents plugging their ears, but it was not always the case. Long ago meant as an instrument of spirituality. It's a complicated legacy, as many of history's inventions often are. So, next time you hear the kazoo play, in between plugging your ears, perhaps the journey it's made can be appreciated by one more individual. Thank you for watching.